just aim it at the...
Yeah.
Does it show that it's... Hold on, let me make sure that it's actually showing that it's recording. Yep, it is. Okay.
Okay, we have about 15 seconds.
Okay.
What was going on with that? What was going on with the microphone when I was trying to tease earlier?
Oh, the board didn't set.
99.9 KEZ with Beth and friends. Good morning. Happy Friday. In the studio with me right now is a man named Chris Small. And Chris called us a few months ago and told us that he was on the road and he'd been driving an RV and dragging his car behind him, I might add, across the country. Dragging probably isn't a good word for it, is it, Chris? So, Chris, you were a listener from a young age to this station. Doesn't seem to have adversely affected you. You seem like you're very normal. And so you decided to drive across the country. So how did this all come about?
So I think it's something that I always wanted to do when I retired, but I found means to do it sooner rather than later. I guess.
You did. Yeah.
I used to work full time at American Express, doing fraud claim investigations for them.
Uh-huh.
And then during COVID, during the pandemic, I think I just decided that I found that Uber, you can actually make a lot of money. You can make your own schedule, which is nice. And I found ways to make it work while on the road. So I tested it out in Arizona. It was working out well. I think the biggest scare that I had when I first started was I transferred everything over to Maine, which is the first state I went to, and it said everything, it was fine, and I was nervous before I got there that if it doesn't work out over here, then I'm so out of luck.
Now, when you say you transferred everything, you mean?
So in Uber, you have to notify them when you move to a new state, and they
Okay.
do like the background check and everything like that.
Mhm.
And I think my biggest worry was that I would have to transfer like my plates and everything like that to Maine, which I have not had to do, thankfully. In the 9 states that I've been to so far, I've been able to keep my Arizona plates. So when I first got over there and everything just started working, I was kind of like a sigh of relief. And
So that's how you make money. You park the RV, you unhook your car, and you Uber, you make money, and that's how you're able to be out on the road. How long did it take you to drive from Arizona to Maine?
it took about a week.
Wow.
I joined up with a kind of like a company that allows you to park at different bars and distilleries and wineries. They're
Perfect.
It's like a group that they have, and you only get access to them if you become members with. It's called Harvest Host. And I was going to be parking there on my way up to Maine, to stop at all these different places, but I had one bad experience where I was supposed to go to this bar and park, and it was packed. I was It was a Friday night. It was super packed.
You're in an RV?
Yeah, with a flatbed trailer and a car behind it. So I'm driving through this really packed parking lot, and I tried to call the company or the bar to get help on where to go to find the spot where everyone was parking, the RVers, and they hung up on me.
So then what?
I found it, but it was very slanted, I was very nervous about it. I thought if I put my stabilizers down, I'm going to flip the RV over.
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving there, and I parked in an empty mall parking lot that night. But then after that, I didn't use any of the Harvest Hosts, unfortunately. I'm sure they're a great company, but I just had such a bad experience with them. I ended up just parking along at rest stops along the freeway.
And I've heard also, don't Walmarts allow you to park in their parking lot?
They do, but I don't, too narrow, too packed.
Okay.
I don't like driving my RV in parking lots like that.
I can't even imagine driving an RV around, especially in these small areas. So did you bought this RV yourself?
Yes, yeah. When I sold my house, I actually did really well with COVID and everything.
I bet you did.
And I managed to make enough to buy the RV outright and stash some money away.
Okay, and so this has been going on for how long now?
I started March last year, so a little over a year.
Okay. And I would imagine your mother is here watching. I'll bet is she at all concerned about? Have you talked about that, about your safety? And
she gets nervous at times. I think. But she always gets to come out and visit me. Like last year, she came out while I was parked in New Jersey, and we actually did a lot of sightseeing. I took her to Niagara Falls. We took the Amtrak
cool.
there. We went to Atlantic City in New Jersey.
That was fun.
Took her around a bunch of different spots in New Jersey. She came with me when I moved the RV to Massachusetts, and then we rented a car and drove to Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Did a couple days doing that. We went to Salem, and we went to
I'd love to go there.
Lizzie Borden House.
Wow, that's very cool. So, by the way, we had a young girl call during KEZ quiz yesterday who said her family is getting ready to do a cross-country road trip. I don't know if she's listening this morning or if they have any questions. But if you want to ask Chris anything about this trip across the country, if you've ever thought about something like this, I've joked about it, but I've never done it. I mean, he's actually doing this with an RV and, also with his car behind him on a flatbed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and the price of gas right now, too, that must be something for you.
Yeah, thankfully I only move it every 2 months,
Okay.
so I only really have to worry about one long trek, and then I kind of have time to stay
there. Okay. 602-260-0999. We're going to come back and talk to Chris Small a little bit more next. Goes fast, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, that was fun. Here, let me. I'm gonna
Okay.
pause that
Should
real
I?
quick. Or here, I'll just stop it.
Okay. Yeah, this is a much better angle.
And you don't have to wear those if you don't want to. You're, whatever you're
Yeah,
most
I kind
comfortable.
of just like
Yeah.
speaking.
99.9 KEZ with Beth and friends. Good morning. I'm talking to Chris Small. Chris grew up here, was a listener, and then about a year ago, he decided I'm going to go out on the road in my RV and drive across the country, and also, toting your car behind you so you can Uber to make money in other states. So, Chris, I've noticed you've mostly been along the East Coast. So did you just drive to the East Coast and decide to start there?
I figured that was the easiest way to do it because ultimately I do want to hit all 50 states over the next 5-6 years. I've tentatively mapped it out, and I figured the best way to do it so I don't have to drive super long when I finish is to start on the East and end in the West.
Right. And so first of all, how long do you plan to do this?
So I've mapped out about 5-6 years. I've done research and I have a spreadsheet basically of RV parks that I've tentatively picked out in each state,
Okay.
and kind of a timeline. I've ended it on, I think, 2028, if everything goes right.
And then what do you do after that? Write a book?
Well, I am writing a bunch of journal entries I'm hoping to
Okay.
publish down the road. It's kind of goes on the perspective of being living in an RV full time and doing Uber in all the different states. Since no one's done it yet that I know of, I'm
Right.
kind of hoping that maybe it'll spark some inspiration.
Do you notice that people are pretty much the same wherever you go, or are there different kinds of people in different states?
I've noticed, yeah. So I've noticed that there are a lot more. When I was in, I'll give an example. When I was in New Jersey, I've noticed that a lot of people weren't really talkative or anything like that. But when I was in, as an Uber driver, but when I was in Vermont and New Hampshire, I got so many people that wanted to chat and was able to tell them my stories. And when I was in parts of New York or near Albany, I would just get people who just put their headphones in and just
Really?
listen to music the whole ride.
Very interesting. Yeah. What's the weirdest experience you've had so far, do you think?
So I've driven people, let's see, so the weirdest experience. So one time I actually drove someone on a ferry. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I drove someone on a ferry as an Uber driver. I picked them up at Burlington Airport in Vermont, and they wanted to go to Plattsburgh, New York, and the route was telling me to take the ferry, and I called up Uber. I'm like, hey, am I getting reimbursed for this $16 that I'm going to be forking out for the ferry? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay.
Wow. What's been your favorite state so far, would you think?
I think Vermont, either Vermont or New York. Vermont had one of my favorite campgrounds because I was parked literally right by this giant creek, and so I would either hear it in the night, I would hear the water rushing, or I'd be able to stand there as the sun was rising and see it right over the creek. It was really relaxing, really beautiful.
I've always wanted to go to Vermont. I haven't gotten there yet, especially, in the fall when the leaves change, which I'm sure you've seen.
Yeah.
Is as beautiful as the pictures show?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so all the New England states I think are really nice. Massachusetts, I think when my mom came out to visit, I think New Hampshire had the most color. That when we were driving through it, all the leaves were. I think maybe it was just because there was more trees where we were driving. It was over by Mount Washington. It was gorgeous.
I've noticed in your photos online, and we'll tell people how they can follow you, that you seem to make new friends in a lot of places.
I do. So I'm actually part of a couple singles groups. One in particular, Events and Adventures, which they actually have a location out here. I've been with them for 5 years. I've been able to do a lot of traveling with them. I did my trip with them last year while I was parked in New Jersey to Kenya, did a safari with them, and then in 2019, before the pandemic, I went to Antarctica with them.
Wow.
So they actually have a bunch of locations all throughout the country. They have chapters in let's see, Texas, California, Seattle, Florida, and then they just opened one recently in Boston. So while I've been on the East Coast, I've been able to kind of hang out with the Events and Adventures people over in Massachusetts.
You have a real adventurous spirit. I mean, at your age to have already been to Antarctica and to go on a safari, and it's pretty amazing. You always been like that since you were really young?
I think I've always had a love for travel. My papa, or my grandpa, my mom's dad, he was born and raised in England, and he always kind of sparked that adventurous inspiration in us. Like we went out several trips. We went to England to visit family out there. We've done a cruise to Alaska when I was growing up, where I almost got
Have you found love on the road, or?
I've made good friends. I've
Your
made
mom
good
to plug
friends.
her ears.
Nothing. I mean, I've made good friends. I'll just.
Yeah, it looks
I'll
like
say
you
that.
have. So you've met some very nice people. Now, I know you're in the East Coast. Are you gonna start to travel south, make your way down into Georgia, Florida, those
Yes,
places,
so-
Carolinas?
So far, I've been to Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island, and I actually do plan on going south more. So I'm hoping. I don't know. Should I say the places that I have coming up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So after Rhode Island, I'll be in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and then Maryland. That'll be the rest of this year.
Okay.
And then next year will be Delaware, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. I'm hoping to do 2 months in each state.
Wow.
And I have the other ones written down. I just don't have them memorized.
Okay. Wow. And then across the country until about, you said 2028 or so.
Yeah, roughly. That's what
Okay.
I've tentatively mapped it out to be.
And then you figure out what to do with the rest of your life after that.
Kind of, pretty much, yeah. So I'm hoping, one of my things that I've kind of been toying around with, because I really like the idea of unique places. Like I've stayed in Sweden, I've stayed in an ice hotel, I've stayed in Belize at a treehouse resort in the jungle. I really like the idea of having something unique. And so I was thinking that I would buy a plot of land and get a double-decker bus and convert it, get maybe like a tree house and convert it, get like a glamping tent, just all these cool places that people can maybe Airbnb and just have that as a resort world maybe that people can stay at. And I have like a wish list, or what do you call it, a inspiration board, I think is what you call it, and of like ideas of what I'll put in all of them.
Now, did you ever hear us do Friends Day Wednesday in the times when you were listening, where I throw the dart at the map and then we just call a stranger in that town?
I do remember that.
Yeah, in fact, that's the map right over there in the corner.
Oh.
Maybe
There it is.
along the way we could have you go to some of our Friends Day Wednesday places and meet these people.
Yeah, I love that.
Because we've got them all over the place, all over the country. So I think that's something we're going to have to talk about. Well, Chris Small, it's really a pleasure to meet you and have you in the studio. I think you're our first guest in the studio since the pandemic started.
Awesome. I feel what's the my mind's running blank. I feel complimented, I guess.
Well, it's nice to have you here, and we're going to keep in touch with Chris and follow his journeys all over the country. Thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you for letting me
your mom for getting in here so early too. All right.
Awesome. Here, I'll take that.
Cool.
Yeah.